Hello everyone. In this lecture, we are going to learn about multidimensional arrays and array lists. In this module, you will learn about multidimensional arrays, variable length argument lists, arrays class, and Arraylists class. Arrays may be multidimensional depending on the need. Tables may be implemented as two-dimensional arrays. Rows and columns make up the dimensions of a two-dimensional array. Here's an example for a multidimensional integer array with 12 elements. In multidimensional arrays, each set of square brackets denotes one dimension. So we have two dimensions here. So this is a two-dimensional integer array. And we also specify the number of elements in each dimension within the square brackets. So when we multiply these 4 and 3, we are going to have 12 elements in this integer array. And here's how we can initialize a multidimensional array. And we are going to use curly braces, and we are going to assign a value to each one of the elements in this multidimensional array. Here's an example of initializing a multidimensional array. Now this is a two-dimension integer array, and we use curly braces to initialize the values for the cells in this table. So we have rows and columns, and this is row 0, row 1, row 2, and row 3. Remember that in Java and also in C++, the array index starts with 0. That's why we start with 0 in both rows and columns. And this is row 0, column 0. This is row 0, column 1. And this is row 0 and column 2. And it continues like this. So this is the first row, row 1, and column 0, row 1 and column 1, and row 1, column 2. So 15 goes here, minus 23 goes here, and 48 goes here, and so forth. And this is the table that we are filling with initializing this two-dimensional integer array. And this table shows which array elements goes to which rows and columns. So this is array 0, 0, this is array 0, 1, array 0, 2, and array 1, 0, and so forth. Let's see an example of multidimensional array in code. Here is how we declare a multidimensional integer array with 6 elements. How do you know that it has 6 elements? Well, when we multiply the number of elements for each dimension, we are going to get the number of elements for that array. So we have 3 and 2. When we multiply these, we are going to get 6, and this is the number of elements for this integer array. In this code, we also see a good example of how we can access the length of each dimension. And with this code, we are accessing the length of the first dimension, and with this code, we are accessing the length of the second dimension. And then we are going to assign a value to each cell in this table, and we are going to print the value of that cell. And here's the output of the code. As you can see, we have assigned a value to each element in the array. In multidimensional arrays, rows may have different lengths. And this was true for the additional dimensions when we declare multidimensional arrays. And here's a multidimensional integer array with variable length rows. As we can see, the rows has different lengths. And here's that example in code. The first row has 4 elements, the second row has only 1 element, the third row has 2 elements, and the fourth row has 3 elements. And with these 4 rows, we are assigning values to each element in the array. And here's the output for that piece of code. As we can see, rows have different number of elements. And here is how we can declare a multidimensional array that has different row lengths without initializing values to array elements. And here's the example in code. And with these 4 loops, we are assigning values to array elements. And here's the output. As we can see, the 0th row has these elements, the first row has these elements, and the second row has these elements. Variable length argument lists may be used to create methods that can receive an unspecified number of arguments. The method takes arguments using this structure. We have the method name, and we specify the type of the arguments, and then we use 3 dots, and then we have the argument list. Now, one important thing about variable length argument list is that it has to be of the same type. Now, here's an example: public setting in total, and the arguments are of type integer. Let's see an example. We have a class called variable length argument list example, and with this class we have two methods. One is total and the other is main. Now, within total we are getting a number of parameters, and they are integers, and we are going to calculate the total of these integers. And we are using an enhanced for loop statement, and we are actually iterating the arguments, and then we are calculating the total, and finally we are returning the total. Now, within main we define 4 integer variables, and then we define an integer array, and we initialize the array. And now we are calling the total method with a different number of parameters, and here we are using total with just one parameter, and that's argument 1. We are sending this argument 1, which was initialized to 5, and then we are calling the total with 2 parameters, such as argument 1 and argument 2. So we are sending these 2 integer arguments to the method total, and then we are calling with 3, we are calling it 4, and we can also call it with the array. So we can send an integer array to the total method. Here is the output of the program, calling the total method with 1 argument, 2 arguments, 3, 4, and with the integer array. Remember that the total method was calculating the integers that was sent to the method. So when we send only one method, it will be 5. When we set 2 arguments, which will be 5 plus 8, which is 13. When we send 3 arguments, then it will be 25, and so forth. Now let's learn about the Arrays class. Java Standard Edition provides an Arrays class that can be used for array manipulations. Now, the Arrays class is a part of the Java util package. Remember that Java util package has a number of good utility packages that we can use for various programming purposes, and the Arrays class has static methods, meaning that these can be used without creating an arrays object. And some of the static methods of the Arrays class are binary search, which can be used to search a sorted array, and we have the copy of method, which can be used for copying an array, and we have the copy of range method, which can be used for copying an array within certain ranges. And of course, we have the equals method, which can be used to check the equality of arrays. And we have a nice method, which is fill, which can be used to fill arrays with values. And we have the sort method, which is used to sort arrays in a number of ways. And finally, we have the toString method, which is used to convert the array to a string. Let's see an example. Now we have to import the Java util arrays class, and then in this example, we created 2 arrays. One is a character array, and here is how we initialize it. And we have an integer array, and we have initialized that integer array as well. Now we are going to use the sort method of the arrays class. Remember that sort is a static method, so we don't have to create an object of the arrays. We can directly use this array sort method, and then we are going to pass the character array as a parameter to the sort method, and then we are printing out the character array, and we are also sending the integer array as a parameter to the sort method, and we are going to print the values of this integer array elements. Here is the output of the program. We had 2 arrays. One was a character array and the other was an integer array, and now these arrays are sorted, and from smallest to the biggest and from smallest to the biggest. And here the character arrays, the smallest was A. Now it's sorted starting with A. And here's our integer array. The smallest is -11. So the sorted array starts with -11. Here they are. Here's another example. Again, we are importing the Java Utils Arrays class, and within the main, we are declaring two arrays. One is a character array, and the other is a double array. And we are not initializing these arrays. We are going to fill them with certain values with the arrays fill method. And we are going to fill the character array with z's, and we are going to fill the double array with 8.3s. And we are going to print the values of these arrays. And here's the output. We have a character array filled with z's, and we have a character array filled with 8.3s. We have another example to see the use of equals method. Now we are declaring three integer arrays and we are initializing them. And here we are comparing the arrays for equality. So we are going to use arrays.equals, and we are going to give the arrays for comparison as parameters. And if these are not equals, we are going to say array 1 and 2 are different. And if these two arrays are equal to each other, then we are going to print out array 2 and array 3 are the same. When we check it, as we can see, array 1 and array 2 are different, while array 2 and array 3 are the same. And here is the output. Array 1 and 2 are different, and array 2 and 3 are the same. This is an example about the binary search. Now we have an integer array. Now remember that binary search works on sorted arrays, so our array is actually sorted, and within this array we are searching for the value of 6. If the binary search can locate this value within the array, it will return the location, and if you find the location, then we are going to print integer 6 is found at integer array, and we are going to print the location. If not, then we are going to say we couldn't find it. And we are searching for the value of 12, which we know that the array does not include the value of 12, so it will give the result that the integer 12 is not found in integer array. And here's the output. The integer 6 is found in integer array at index 2, and integer 12 is not found in the integer array. If you look at it, remember that the arrays start with the index 0, so this is 0, 1, and 2. So the program gave the result that the integer 6 is found at the location 2. Java Standard Edition also has a static array copy method in the Java Lang system package. The array copy method copies an array from the specified source array, beginning at the specified position, and to the specified position of the destination array. Now here's the prototype for the array copy. Now this is a static method, so you can use it without creating the object. And here's the source array, and here's the destination array. And from the source, we are going to start copying an array portion. And here's the destination, and here's the length that we are going to copy from the source. Now let's see an example. And here we have a print array method, and we have a main method. Now within the print array, we are going to display the integer array, and we are going to print with a message. And then here's we are passing the array as a parameter, and we are going to actually print the values of the array elements. Now within the main, we have two arrays, and this is the original array, and this is the array that I want to copy from the original. And here's how I'm printing the initial values of the array. And then I'm going to copy from the original the source array, the source object. Remember, in Java, arrays are objects starting from the 0 index, meaning that's starting from the first element. And then I'm going to copy, this is destination array, to the int array. I'm going to start from the 0 index, and then I'm going to copy all the elements to the second array. And I'm going to print these arrays on the screen. And here's the initial values of the int array copy. Remember that we have not initialized the int array copy, and this will be default to 0 by the Java compiler, and then this is my original array, and after I'm copying the array, it will be the same with the original array. Also, here's an important point. As you can see, we have not imported any package for this example because the Java Lang system is the default package in Java, so you don't have to import the Java Lang system package. It's the default package for Java, so the array copy will be available without you specifically importing it. It's already imported by default. Java Development Kit (JDK) is the collection of application development tools such as the compiler, JavaDoc, and others, and the packages such as the standard edition that are necessary to write and execute Java programs. And JDKs come with distributions, and since Java Development Kit 1.2, JDK 1.2, Java provides a unified architecture to store and manipulate a collection of objects. And this framework is called the collection framework. Java also provides arrays, vectors, and hash tables for storing and manipulating objects similar to collections. While all of these achieve similar goals, they all had different interfaces. Collections provided a common interface for object group processing. One of the strengths of Java comes from its extensive support with packages and libraries. Now you can find a package for any common programming need. So throughout time, Java developers develop many packages that you can use for many different data structures. And we have given some examples such as arrays, vectors, and hash tables. And of course, this extensive use sometimes creates confusions, and therefore we may need to standardize the use of these packages and libraries. So collections was an example of that, since we have many different packages for manipulating data objects, groups of data objects. So these are unified in terms of use, in terms of using them in certain programming endeavors through collections. Here are some important links related to collections. Now these are the official Java documentation links, and Java util package provides the collection framework, and you can access using this link, and the collection framework is explained here, and you can find the details of the collection interface under this link. Through a series of interfaces, the collections framework supports a number of classes. Some of the interfaces are list, queue, and set. Some of the classes implementing the list interface are arraylist, linked list, vector, stack. Some of the classes implementing the queue interface are arrayDQ, priorToQueue, and for the set interface, we can implement enumSet, hashSet, and treeSet. My goal in this lecture is not to go into details of collections, but merely letting you know that we have support for a number of data structures in Java, and probably as a Java developer, you won't need to develop linked lists, queues, or sets because they're already implemented with certain packages, and you basically have to know or learn about the interfaces, and then you can simply use these packages and classes to implement the feature that you are going to need in your software projects. Now let's learn about the Arraylists class. The size of arrays cannot be changed during execution, right? So Arraylist allows us to dynamically change the size of arrays to accommodate more array elements. And here's the prototype for it. We are going to specify ArrayList, and then T is a type. An ArrayList can be used by primitive and reference types. Some of the methods in the Arraylist class are add, that adds an element to the ArrayList, clear, clears the elements in the ArrayList, contains, checks for an element in the ArrayList, and get, returns an element from the ArrayList, remove, removes an element from the array list, and size, which returns the size of the array list. Now let's see an example of an array list. Here is our class Arraylist example, and here is our main method. Now we are creating an array list for computer scientists using new, and then we are going to print a line such as famous computer scientist. Using the add method of the Arraylist class, we are going to add an element to our computer science array list. Then we are going to add another element, and then using an overloaded version of add, we are going to add an element to a particular index. Then using the size method, we are going to get the length of this array list, and then using the get method, we are going to access a particular element at an index. And here's the output, famous computer scientists. And as we can see, we were adding these computer scientists, and we were also able to add another computer scientist into a particular location, such as the first element in this array list. And this is 0, this is first, and this is the second. Now let's extend this example. The first portion of the code is the same with the previous example, but we are going to add more elements to the list. So we are adding 2 more computer scientists, and then using enhanced for loop statement, we are going to print the computer scientist. And here is the output. Now let's extend the example to see some other methods in the Arraylist class. The first portion of the code is the same. The second portion is the same. Now we are removing an element from the array list using the index number, and we can also remove the element directly. And we can also check whether an element exists in the array list using the contains method. Now here's the output. This is the first time that we were creating famous computer scientists, and we were extending the array list by adding some new elements to the list. And then we are removing an element using the index number. We are removing an element using the element itself. And of course our list will come down to 3. And then we are checking whether a particular element exists in the list and using the contains method. And we see that this Ada Lovelace, the famous computer scientist, exists in the list. Here's an exercise for you to practice what you learned in this lecture. Create a multidimensional double array with variable length rows. Create a variable length argument list method that can take double arrays. Print the results. Create an array list of double numbers. Use add, remove, contains method to manipulate the list. And this is the end of this module.